Uh, Hi, JottCast. Matt here. Ever wanted to live in your car? Me neither. But if you think about it, with some context, the idea doesn't sound that far fetched. I mean, consider the tiny home craze just a couple years ago, and some would argue maybe the tiny home craze is still even happening today. So, people uh, leave their home or apartment and move into a tiny home. Maybe the next logical step is saying, wow, even this is too much space. All I really need is the size of like 1/8 of a bedroom, and I'm golden. So let's move into that car. Imagine that. Now, but with all seriousness, I have seen people adore the idea of living in a tiny home. I can't tell you how many times I've heard my cousins or random people on Facebook saying that they wish they could move into a tiny home, trying to figure out the logistics of it. It's almost as if moving into a tiny home is their calling in life. They're so passionate about it. Ah, man. I even remember one time I was waiting in line at the dentist's office, and there it was, a TV show where they were building tiny homes. So I can't say that the idea is completely crazy because apparently there's a lot of people who have that drive and desire to scale down and live a minimalist lifestyle. And whenever I hear people talking about tiny homes, it really sounds like they're in some sort of pure bliss. I can't understand it, but it just seems like they are on another level of happiness. And maybe if you take the tiny home idea and scale it down so it's even smaller, and you're talking about a mobile home now, maybe that pure bliss festers and evolves until eventually you're just on permanent cloud nine. And it's almost like that little trailer or little mobile home you're toting behind your car, that little slice of 5 by 10 space. Hey, maybe that's a slice of heaven right there. But boy, was I wrong because I read Nomadland Surviving America in the 21st Century by Jessica Bruder. Man, this book takes a deep dive into the American nomad lifestyle, which is a real thing. I did not know it existed. I did not know that people did this. And it's very widespread in my own home country that I was oblivious to. And yes, this is a review of the book Nomadland by Jessica Bruder. So, let's see. Did this book make me want to drive to my local bookstore, purchase another copy, and read it in the parking lot? Or am I taking my next road trip with another book? Let's find out. Okay, I cannot stress this enough. This book is non-fiction. And I kept seeing this book everywhere. I mean, whenever I would get onto my library app on my phone, whenever I would actually physically go to the library, I would see that book everywhere. It was like librarians were really wanting me to read it. And not only that, but I saw that it was getting a movie on Hulu. So now suddenly I'm seeing stuff about it in that regard. So there really seemed to be some metaphysical push trying to drive this book towards me. And eventually I looked into it. Now, I said it was nonfiction, but my first impression before I even picked up the book was that it was going to be about a main character who was probably fictitious, and she was going around interviewing all these very, very real people. But boy, was I wrong. Maybe that's the way that the movie is set up on Hulu. I don't know. I haven't watched it. I've only read the book, but the way the book is, it's honestly uh, just Jessica Bruder herself interviewing these people. So the book was written by her, and you know what? She's actually a college professor of journalism. And this book is written in a very journalistic style. So the facts are stated simply. And there's a couple of instances with artistic flair, but really, I felt like I was reading a very, very long newspaper article. For some people, that might be a bad thing, but for me, I thought it was really cool. And not only was it cool, but it gave me time to absorb this phenomenon that I never knew existed. I want to reiterate that all this stuff is real. So seeing this was crazy. Not only that, but I live on the East Coast of America. So it was cool for me to see uh, people living in their vehicles on the West Coast. It was so different than what my experience is. And it was very interesting. Um, so I really loved all the facts and details whenever it came to this. Every single paragraph, for the most part, is just chock full of information. It kind of blows my mind. I mean, you definitely feel like a journalist wrote this. Uh, and a paragraph will start off, and then in order to support her claim, she'll have some fact or stat in there. And I really wonder how long it took her to write this book. Now, on that note, she did actually live this lifestyle for 3 years. So she did a deep, deep dive. This was a real passion project for her. So I can imagine that's why the book turned out so well. So anyway, I want to keep this as more of a book review and not a book summary. Anybody can just pick up a book and read it, and I do recommend that you read it. It's like a 7 hour experience, so you're not going to be uh, breaking your clock over this. All right, so that's what I'd have to say. Uh, let's go back to the tiny home comparison. I would have thought that people living in a mobile home would be people my age and maybe younger, because that seemed to always be the demographic whenever I'm watching TV shows about building tiny homes. And yeah, I always felt like I was one of the few people my age who didn't think it was that great of an idea, but a lot of people my age did think it was really cool. And uh, everybody older than me seemed to think it was so stupid, so dumb. Why would you do this? Why would you move into such a small house? Obviously, it's to save money. That's what it normally boils down to. The whole minimalist lifestyle is to kind of force yourself into saving money because life is so expensive nowadays. But I want you to remember that that's been my experience. Maybe different for you, but remember that people my age want tiny homes. People older do not. Okay. Now we're moving into the idea of Nomadland, where people live in RVs, they live just straight up their car, and they also live in little trailers that they pull behind their car that are essentially the size of 1/8 of a bedroom. It's incredibly small living quarters. So who do you think's doing this? I was blown away. It's not people my age. It's people older. I mean, these people are classified as senior citizens. They're 59 and a half and older. Um, and a lot of these people are even receiving their social security checks, so they're 62 or older. It blows my mind. So the book takes you through the shoes of three main people. And again, I just want to stress that these are real people. But that doesn't mean the book is narrow and holds on to these three people, because there's tens of thousands of people who are forced into this lifestyle. So there must have been testimonies from tens to hundreds of people kind of sprinkled in here. And this really is a testament to how good her writing style is, because you never feel burdened. It's just facts and information being uploaded into your brain as you're reading. So she spent 3 years living this way, and somehow she's able to cram all these experiences into 7 hours. So she wasn't just living with them, she was working alongside them. And yeah, that's right, working. These senior citizens may be taking their Social Security check, but they are not retired, even though they do say that they are. That's because they do not have enough money to live, and the vast majority of them didn't even choose to do this. They had no choice. They were kind of pushed out of their previous living situation for different reasons, and they find themselves living this mobile lifestyle. So they're not lazy bums. They're actually driving all around the country seeking out seasonal jobs. It keeps them tied to some location for 3 to 4 months, and then they walk away. And they usually hate the place by the time it's time for them to go because the living conditions are terrible. Terrible living conditions, terrible work conditions. Honestly, jobs that most people would just straight up not do. And please just read the book so that you can get a better sense than what I can detail in just a short, hopefully 10-minute video. Not only that, but they get really low pay. So they're trying to live off their low pay. They're trying to live off their small Social Security check just so they can get by until their next paycheck comes next month. All of this, they don't have their housing requirement anymore. They couldn't afford it, even if they wanted it. They got rid of it for a reason. And now they're using that little bit of money, hoping to put gasoline in their car and food in their bellies. Um, it's not all negative, though. She does go into certain places that are really kind of wacky. I really like the way she described places like the quartz site in Arizona. It really gave me a sense as if I was there. And on top of that, all the experiences. I felt like somebody had shoved a VR headset over my head, and I was somehow experiencing all of this. So the terrible working conditions, I felt it. One of the places they go to is a fulfillment center. I would call it a distribution center. I've actually worked at one before, and it sounded so much worse than the distribution center that I worked at. So I was able to really put myself there and imagine the conditions she was describing in the setting that I used to work. And then away from all the negative stuff, she talks about the court site in Arizona, and that was actually really cool. I could see people wanting to put it on their bucket list, honestly, and want to go there and visit and make it like a tourist site. So I definitely saw some sort of appeal there because I think there is an appeal to this lifestyle where you're constantly moving. Maybe you're not in the best financial situation, but I think most people they want to see things and they want to experience the country. We live in a giant country and they want to experience that country. They want to constantly move around and see things. So I see that as a positive. And visiting the quartz site, Arizona, through the eyes of Jessica Bruder was really eye opening, and I actually felt like I was there. It was very cool. But getting back to the negativity a little bit, because this is like a humanitarian piece of work. That's what you kind of have to know that you're getting into before you read it. So I think it's a little too easy, especially having just witnessed that tiny home craze. It's a little too easy to go online, go to YouTube, go to a blog, and see that wow, anybody can build a tiny home, and guess what? It's the best thing ever. And you can do the same thing for living in an RV. But what Jessica Bruder does is she flips that expectation. Everybody says how positive it is. She says, really? Well, maybe you should see this point of view before you take that leap. Um, and one last thing I'd like to talk about is the beginning of the book. I think it's really nicely done because it it starts off like a story. It's her driving with one of the main people that she ends up interviewing throughout the book, and they're driving together to a campsite in California, and that's where that uh, interviewee is going to work for the next few months. So I think that she starts it off really well. It actually feels like a story, and I thought the whole book was going to be like that. Like I said, I thought that that was that person with the interviewee was like a fake person, a fake interviewer, and that was like going to be a fictitious character, but no. But it really hooks you in, and you go, "Wow, okay, cool. Let's go on this trip." I felt like I was driving up those mountains. The way she explains how the mountain range that they're driving up to, it's not just boring. It's one of those pieces of American geography that really uh, is something that will make you awestruck. And the way she described helium feeling like helium is filling up your lungs to make your chest expand so that you can really witness the beauty of the mountain range. I was like, wow, that's really good. And she doesn't do that very often though. Those more literature type things, she holds off and uses them very sparingly, which made me appreciate them a little bit more. Whenever a book is overly romanticized, I kind of start to lose interest because I'm constantly filling my lungs with helium and I'm constantly being bedazzled by something. So using it sparingly helped me put myself in that kind of opening up position a little bit better. Um, and then the way she just kept it with facts, stating facts, it was simple to the point and it hooked me. So, like I said, I do recommend you read this book. You kind of have to know what you're getting into. Whenever I realized that story time was essentially over and it was now journalism for the rest of the book, I gotta admit I was a little disappointed. I wanted it to continue on more of a story path. But what the book actually is, I mean, I think that's really important, this next thing. It's important to not put expectations on a book. A book is what it is. It's not what you thought it was going to be. So, as I was reading it, I was thinking, okay, this is what the book is actually about. This is how the book was actually written. And I got to say that it was fascinating. And it put in a real fear for me to never lose my job. Never lose my job and hoard every dollar. Don't spend a single penny that's not necessary. You know, maybe I'll lose that train of thought as time goes on, but that's my immediate feeling after reading the book is always have a giant stash of money. And on that note, that's why I put my piggy bank in the background here. He wasn't initially here. It was just a stack of books, but I was like, maybe I should start putting money in that little guy. All right. So I would definitely recommend it. You're going to learn a whole new subculture of the American experience. And for them, it's a very normal experience. The way you're going to read the book, it's going to feel normal for you too by the time you finished it. Okay, well, this is Matt from JottCast signing off.